I believe that everyone has a shadow. If you are alive, of course, but, of course, it is not a shadow that is not so strong, but a shadow that always accompanies you. The story I am about to tell you is an event that happened a few years ago, when my memory is still fresh. I was in the second year of junior high school. The junior high school I attended was H Junior High School in Miyazaki. It was a school with only about 3 classes per grade, and the number of students was small. I made a lot of friends and hung out with them every day after school. I had a lot of friends, and I would hang out with them every day after school. One of my closest friends was A and B. I have known Mr. A and Mr. B since elementary school. We did everything together, and perhaps because of that, our hobbies and activities were similar. We had similar hobbies and activities. Air guns were popular among us at the time. We were not allowed to have air guns at school, but we brought air gun catalogs and talked about how cool they were and how we wanted one. We talked about air guns and had a lot of fun. They talked about air guns. One day, Mr. A told me that he had bought an air gun, and we decided to go to his house to see it. It was a not so big handgun. It was not a very big handgun, but it was very realistic and I was fascinated by it at once. Then Mr. B, who was also influenced by me, bought an air gun. I also bought an air gun. After that, I took my air gun with me every day. I was playing with air guns and shooting at targets and spiders every day. Then, as summer vacation approached, I naturally began to hear more and more scary stories. The scary stories told by the teachers at school were also frightening. But there was one guy in my class who had a strong psychic sense and he often told scary stories. The scary stories he told were, to put it simply, there was a facility near my school that had collapsed. A friend of mine, my friend's brother, and I entered the facility in the middle of the night. We went into the facility in the middle of the night to try out our courage. The facility is quite famous. It is a haunted place. In front of a mirror in the bathroom of the facility, when you close your eyes for 4 seconds and open them, if you see a woman's face in the mirror, it is a good thing. If you close your eyes for 4 seconds and open them, you will see a woman's face in the mirror. If you see a man's face, you will be cursed for the rest of your life. To test it out, 3 of them went, apparently. One went into the bathroom first, and the other 2. The first one went in and the other 2 waited outside the restroom. The first one went in, the second one went in, and they both had nothing but their own faces. However, at the end of the day, my friend's brother, they were waiting outside when suddenly there was a scream in the restroom. When they rushed outside, they found the brother's right leg bleeding. When they rushed outside, blood was flowing from the brother's right leg. Although they did not bleed much, the 3 men were able to escape the facility. They fled the facility. I don't know why their legs bled after all. I don't know why their legs bled in the end. I think that was the story. When we heard the story, we were intrigued and decided to go to the establishment. But we were not going there to test the rumor. We decided to go there as if we were going to exterminate a ghost. The day of the visit was Saturday night at 12 p.m. We were to leave home when our parents went to bed. We were to leave home around the time our parents went to bed. We brought an air gun and a flashlight. At 12 o'clock on Saturday night, both Mr. A and Mr. B gathered at the meeting place. Mr. A, did you bring your air gun? We each promised to bring an air gun. I remembered to bring my air gun. A brought salt as well as an air gun. When I asked him why he brought salt, he said A replied confidently, salt is effective when you are cursed. A replied confidently, salt works when you are cursed. Both B and I were relieved to see the knowledgeable A-kun. We were relieved to have the knowledgeable Mr. A. The meeting place was close to the facility, so we decided to walk there. We decided to go on foot. The road we were accustomed to walking on looked like a different road, seemed to be a different road from the one we were used to walking on. When we arrived at the entrance of the facility, the eeriness was indeed even more. The gate was closed, but it was easy to get in and out of the building. Although the gate was closed, it was easily climbed over it. The door was broken open. I was able to go in as it was. Mr. B said, "Isn't this kind of scary?" But I and Mr. A both said, "It's okay." I and Mr. A both said it's okay. I pushed Mr. B's back and we moved forward. The facility has 2 floors, and we decided to explore the first floor for now. We decided to explore the first floor. The light from the flashlights was not enough to illuminate us, not even moonlight. The view was quite limited. Both A and I were huddled together, holding on to B's shoulders. Every once in a while, Mr. B would exclaim, "Oh my God, I stepped on something." I would yell, "Oh my God." Both A and I were shaking, saying, "Hey, you really scared me." I was shaking. After a certain amount of time, I got used to the darkness. I jokingly asked, "Is there something behind you? Or you've got something on your back? And you've got something on your back," and we would scare each other, "And you've got something on your back," and we were laughing. After exploring the first floor for now, we had to go to the second floor. The second floor was where the bathroom was located. The 3 of us were asked to go ahead of each other, and we were all told to go up the stairs, the end of which we could not see. The 3 of us were to proceed side by side in a single file. We were all afraid of something coming out. Mr. Bed suddenly. The atmosphere was clearly different from that on the first floor, and the walls and floor were in shreds. The walls and floor were in shreds. Mr. A suddenly muttered, "Hey, didn't you hear something just now?" I suddenly muttered, "Hey, seriously, don't do that." Both B and I were so scared that we became nervous, and both B and I were so scared that we became a little nervous and snapped at each other. But I still insisted, "No, I'm serious." "No, I'm serious," I countered. Then the 3 of us argued for a while. But then Mr. B opened his mouth and said, hey, wait a minute, and stopped talking in a hurry. Both A and I looked at B, wondering what was going on. Mr. B said, "I heard it too." Mr. A said, "You did, didn't you? You heard it, didn't you?" As if his suspicions had been confirmed, he rolled his eyes. Mr. B said, "Yeah. It sounded like a clacking sound, didn't it?" Mr. A said, Yes. I can hear something, though it's only every once in a while." The 2 seemed to hit it off. I didn't hear any noise at all, so I was sure they were. I thought they must have been joking around again. However, both of them started to get impatient for some reason, and at about the same time they both mouthed at the same time. Apparently, they heard our footsteps. In order to hide for the time being, we hid behind a large desk. That was lying nearby. Mr. A sprinkled salt around us while saying, "Oh, no, oh, no, oh, no." He sprinkled salt on us as well. We became even more nervous. We each clutched our air guns. In case of emergency, we were going to fight with the air gun. I was going to fight with that air gun. "Can you hear me?" Mr. B asked. "No. Can you?" I replied. I shook my head, as I still couldn't hear him at all. "What do you want to do? Go?" Mr. B said. I didn't say anything, but I nodded, and so did Mr. A. To be honest, I was scared. As soon as I stepped out from the shadow of the desk, I was so paranoid that there might be a spirit in my head. I decided to take myself out at the last moment, and I jumped out with an air gun at the ready. I jumped out of the desk. I shined my flashlight. Nothing. All 3 of us were huffing and puffing and gasping for breath. At that moment, Mr. A shouted, "Hey! Over there, toward the restroom." The 3 of us all turned our flashlights toward the bathroom at once. The restroom became bright all at once. It was only for a moment, but I saw a shadowy black thing disappear. I saw a black thing disappear. You were there, weren't you? Something. Mr. B opens his mouth. Of course. I nodded, because I could see it too. But since I could see the shadow so clearly, I was not afraid. I was sure that there were others who had come to. We all thought that there must be others who came here to test their courage. Hey, let's go, B-kun said. Let's go, Mr. B said, holding up an air gun and running. At that moment, I felt like a movie hero, chasing after intruders rather than chasing after spiritual things. I felt like a movie hero, chasing after the intruder rather than chasing after a spiritual object. When you came to the entrance of the restroom, you held your air gun and leaned against the wall as if you were SWAT going in. I leaned against the wall with my air gun at the ready. Mr. B signaled with his eyes. Both A and I nodded without saying anything. We both nodded without saying anything and pointed our flashlights at the toilet at once. But nothing was there. I said, "Hey, is there anyone here? There's someone out there, isn't there? Come out." Mr. B shouted. B shouted. There was no response. The restroom was designed to be shared by men and women. There were 2 toilets for men to pee in a row, and 1 Japanese-style toilet for men and women. There was 1 Japanese-style toilet for both men and women to pee. The only place to hide was where the Japanese-style toilet with a door was. The only place to hide was where the Japanese toilet with the door was. However, the door was open, and inside, of course there was nothing inside. Hey, you saw it, didn't you? Mr. A confirmed. Of course I saw it. Of course I saw it. I looked for another place to hide, but there was no way. Fear came over me all at once. But nothing was there. I said, "Hey, is there anyone here? There's someone out there, isn't there? Come out." Mr. B shouted. B shouted. There was no response. The restroom was designed to be shared by men and women. There were 2 toilets for men to pee in a row, and 1 Japanese-style toilet for men and women. There was 1 Japanese-style toilet for both men and women to pee. The only place to hide was where the Japanese-style toilet with a door was. The only place to hide was where the Japanese toilet with the door was. However, the door was open, and inside, of course there was nothing inside. Hey, you saw it, didn't you? Mr. A confirmed. Of course I saw it. Of course I saw it. I looked for another place to hide, but there was no way. Fear came over me all at once. This is it, right? A mirror? Mr. B suddenly said as he shone the mirror. I said, looking around warily, "It's the one where you close your eyes for 4 seconds, eh?" he said, looking around cautiously. "Let's do someone?" Mr. B said. Both A and I were afraid of the shadow and couldn't do anything about it. "You do it." "I'll watch from here," Mr. A said. "You guys stay here for sure," B reminded him. "I'm not going anywhere. I'll help you if anything happens." Mr. A was holding up an air gun. I think his face was smiling. Then Mr. B closed his eyes and began to count the number of guns while saying them out loud. 1, 2. As I was watching behind me, Mr. A pushed me on the shoulder. I didn't say it out loud, but it was obvious that he was thinking, "Let's leave Mr. B and run away." I shook my head. I was shaking my head, but I was defeated by A-kun's push, and I slipped out of the bathroom. I left the restroom where Mr. B was. I left the bathroom with Mr. B and ran to the stairs at once. I left the bathroom with Mr. B and ran to the stairs at once. B noticed my footsteps and said, "Hey, you guys, stop. You guys, stop it. Wait." He chased after me in a very impatient voice. We were already waiting on the stairs, and running from the other side of the stairs with a flashlight. At that time, I and Mr. A noticed something and shouted. "Hey," he said. "Run. Come on, come on, come on. Come on." I shouted to my heart's content. I shouted, and as soon as Mr. B came, I went down the stairs, I ran down the stairs as soon as Mr. B arrived. We then ran to a nearby park. The three of us sat on a bench, gasping for air. Ha, ha, seriously, you guys are impossible. Mr. B said under his breath. I'm sorry, Mr. A apologized honestly. So, what happened? Mr. M, who knew nothing about it, asked again. When he had calmed down, Mr. A began to talk. You know, when you came running from the bathroom? We were shining our flashlights on you. Right? Mr. B nodded his head. Mr. A continued, then I saw your big shadow on the screen. You know? Mr. A suddenly turned his eyes to me. I nodded without saying anything. Besides your shadow, there were a lot of hands in the picture. What? Mr. B was surprised. The shadow of your hand in the picture. It looked like it was trying to pull you. It looked like they were trying to pull you. What? No way. There was no one there. If anything happens to me, I'll really hate you guys. Mr. B glared at me. And that day, we each received salt from Mr. A and went home. I was scared just to go home alone. Of course, I was scared just to go home alone. I couldn't even turn off the light in my room. I sat on the bed with salt and an air gun. The next day, Sunday, I stayed home as if nothing had happened. Then Monday, I went to school as usual. I always arrived just in time to be late, so when I entered the classroom, I was greeted with a lot of noise from the students who had already arrived. I always arrived just in time to be late, so when I entered the classroom, it was noisy with the students who had arrived before me. On that day, unlike usual, there was a group of students. I entered the group to see what was going on. I walked into the group to see what was going on, and Mr. A invited me in. We were just talking about Saturday. You saw it, didn't you? He reminded me of an incident that I had been trying to forget. Apparently, we were talking about the shadow hand. As I was talking with him, the psychic, you know who opened his mouth. I was talking to him, and he opened his mouth. Did you guys count to 4 seconds? To which Mr. A replied, no, it was B who counted. He looked at me. I nodded yes. There's more to the rumor, though. The guy continued. The rumor, he continued, is as I mentioned earlier, when you close your eyes for 4 seconds in front of a mirror and open them. If a woman appears in the mirror, good things happen. If you see a man, you will be cursed for the rest of your life. If it is a man, you will be cursed for the rest of your life. Apparently, there was more to the rumor. You know who? He continued further. He counted to 4 seconds, opened his eyes, and said, if it's a woman, fine. If it's a man, it's bad. But there is something worse. It's when you open your eyes before the count of 4 seconds is over. I and Mr. A were horrified. I wondered if Mr. B might have opened his eyes before the count was over. B might have opened his eyes before the count was over. It was unusual for Mr. B to not have come to school yet. I am not sure, but I heard from Mr. A what would happen if he opened his eyes before the count of 4 seconds. Asked me what would happen if I opened my eyes before the count of 4 seconds. I opened my eyes before the 4-second count, and I'm pulled into the mirror. I'm pulled. That mirror was broken, right? That's why they say the body, so they say it pulls you in pieces. At that moment, the classroom door rattled open and everyone looked at once. There was Mr. B with a bandage on his arm. What's wrong? Everyone rushed to him. Mr. B said, I don't know. Saturday night, I came home and got a cut. It wasn't a big cut, but it wouldn't stop bleeding. I'm exaggerating, but just in case. He laughed bitterly. The guy in question burst out laughing and asked, you guys, what's the matter with you? Didn't you guys have some salt or something with you? I had some, and I sprinkled some on B, too. Mr. A answered. The guy started talking as if he had solved the mystery. I see. So that's what this is about. I told you before, didn't I? With a friend, I told you that I went there with my friend and my friend's brother. I heard about it later. I heard later that my friend's brother got scared and opened his eyes. He opened his eyes before the count of 4 seconds. So, you know, he covered his eyes with salt to ward off evil. Maybe that's why he only got his leg cut off. This concludes this story. Thank you for listening to the end.